Welcome to the Paper 3 Political Ideas revision video on feminism. In this video we will be looking at to what extent is the economy linked with a patriarchal society. Here is a reminder of the four themes of Paper 3. Today we'll be focusing on the economy. Not all political ideologies contain a strong economic perspective, but some do and should be reflected in analysis where it applies. All feminists are agreed that women are discriminated against in the economic world. The main examples of discrimination and inequality include women being used as a form of unpaid labour in the home, women being used as a pool of low-paid, often part-time, dispensable labour that is employed in times of economic growth but discarded during economic slumps. By working for low wages, women therefore help to keep the general level of incomes down by creating more competition for scarce jobs. Women tend to be paid lower wages than men for similar work, which we call the pay gap. Even in fields where women employees are welcome, the senior jobs in all forms of organisations tend to be reserved for men only. This is called the glass ceiling. In other words, women are denied equality of opportunity. Those who describe themselves as socialist feminists, however, go further. They take as their inspiration the ideas of Karl Marx's close collaborator, Friedrich Engels, in the late 19th century. Engels placed the oppression of women firmly at the door of capitalism. In pre-capitalist society, he claimed women enjoyed a freer, more prominent place in most societies, but industrial capitalism reduced them to inferior wage slaves. So modern socialist feminists also see the exploitation of women and capitalism as bound together in a system of oppression. Just as male workers were exploited in the early days of capitalist development, so women are exploited in modern post-industrial society. British socialist feminist Sheila Rowbottom takes up Engels' theory and proposes an equally revolutionary solution. This is the overthrow of capitalism and its replacement by a new world where equality is paramount. She says, "It is only when women start to organise in large numbers that we become a political force and begin to move towards the possibility of a truly democratic society in which every human being can be brave, responsible, thinking and diligent in the struggle to live at once freely and unselfishly. Such a democracy would be communism and is beyond our present imagining." Sheila Rowbottom comes from a Marxist background, but did criticise Marxists for taking a narrow view of the oppression of women by confining themselves to analyse the role of women in industrial capitalism rather than in domestic life and wider society. She says men will often admit other women are oppressed, but not you. Rowbottom is implying here that men cannot really understand the nature of oppressions that they are imposing upon women. In other words, they can recognise it in theory, but don't see it in practice. Let's look at some examples of feminism in action regarding the economy. Looking at the fight for equal pay in the UK. The Sex Discrimination Removal Act of 1919 changed the law on women being disqualified from certain professions on the grounds of sex. However, many women still found that they were being treated unfairly in the workplace as they received less money than men, sometimes for doing the same job. So what led to a change? Well, there's a number of things. First, there was the women's strike in Dagenham, Essex in 1968. In 1968, 187 women sewing machinists at the Ford Motor Company plant in Dagenham, Essex, went on strike. Their jobs had been regraded at a less skilled grade than men, meaning they were being paid 85% of the rate being paid to men. Barbara Castle, then Secretary of State for Employment and Productivity, intervened on behalf of the Dagenham women, and they returned to work after their pay was raised to 92% of that of men. If you want to dig a little deeper and have a look at this in more detail, Made in Dagenham is a 2010 British comedy drama film that dramatises the Ford sewing machinist strike of 1968 that aimed for equal pay for women. Based on the true story, Made in Dagenham explores the movement that caused a significant law reform. Rita O'Grady, a fictional character, leads the 1968 Ford sewing machinist strike at the Ford Dagenham plant, where female workers walk out to protest sexual discrimination, demanding equal pay. Their strike drew major attention around the world because it's considered contrary to women's traditional family roles. The film was later made into a musical in 2014. A second act that led to more equal pay for women was the equal pay demonstration in Trafalgar Square in 1969. Inspired by the Ford machinists, women trade unionists founded the National Joint Action Campaign Committee for Women's Equal Rights. In May 1969, the group organised an equal pay demonstration in Trafalgar Square, attended by 1,000 protesters. This, together with the outcome of the sewing machinist strike, led directly to the Equal Pay Act of 1970. For the first time, employers had to treat men and women who were doing the same job equally in their pay and in their conditions. So, how much progress has been made? The Equal Pay Act of 1970 was introduced as a result of those two actions. However, it didn't come into force until 1975. The introduction of the Equal Pay Act meant that for the first time it became law for men and women in the UK to be paid the same salary for equal work. 4 decades after the Equal Pay Act received royal assent, it was replaced by the Equality Act of 2010, which consolidated several acts. In 2019, Glasgow City Council agreed to pay out £548 million to compensate thousands of women who were paid less than men in jobs of the same grade. This was after more than 8,000 women employed in schools, nurseries, and cleaning and catering services had been on the biggest ever equal pay strike in the UK. A key part of the Paper 3 exam is being able to explain how each key thinker approaches the core ideas. At the end of every video on a core theme, we will review how the key thinkers approach the core theme in question. Starting off with Simone de Beauvoir. She says that men's domination of economic life restricts the life choices open to women. Bell Hooks believes that women living in poverty have problems that middle-class women do not face. The liberation of the poor is an economic as well as a social issue. Sheila Rothbottom has a Marxist perspective, saying that women are a low-paid reserve army of labour. Charlotte Perkins Gilman says that the domestic servitude of women allowed men to dominate the outside economic world, whereas Millett is a quasi-socialist. However, this is not reflected in her fundamentals towards her feminism.